This guy's talking about the wages in Florida not keeping up. He goes to talk about how McDonald's is hiring for $16.50 an hour for managers and $13.50 an hour for employees.
Sir, you do understand that managers are employed by their employers, which makes them employees, right? Anyway, continue.
So that there's no way that someone working these wages can afford the rent in the town that this location is at.
Yeah, I'd say he's got a point. There's not a whole lot of places in this country that $13 an hour is going to cover the rent.
So before you go, oh my gosh, that's so unfair, I want you to give a different way to think about this.
Do we? Are you sure about that? Because I feel like the numbers are pretty self-explanatory on how we should be thinking about this one. But go ahead.
Florida is one of the most desirable places in this country to live.
Huh? Sir, have you been to Florida? Like, ever? Florida is less desirable than your Tinder profile. Living in Florida is like being trapped in a hot tub full of raw sewage while trying to fight off a guy who wants to eat your face. Trust me, I know. I lived there for 8 years, and that was in the good parts. Florida doesn't even rank in the top 10 of any list by any metric of best places to live. But don't get me wrong, I love the Keys, and like visiting South Florida is great for a week, like a business week, maybe. But I had every opportunity to live there, and clearly I don't. Please go on explaining why being trapped in America's dumpster fire, surrounded by the world's worst drivers and people who tip 5% and tell you not to spend it all in one place, means you deserve to be paid poverty wages.
Richer people are willing to pay more money to live in that area, which makes high-paying jobs in Florida.
What the fuck are you talking about? Florida's average income is 12% lower than the national average, and it's the least affordable state in the country to live. They're ranking like the 75th percentile. They're competing with states like fucking Alabama, which is really fucking pathetic when you consider Florida's population and GDP. Florida has one of the oldest populations in the country. Nobody's moving there for the economic opportunity. They're moving there because they're looking for a warm place to die. Maybe get some syphilis in the process. You know, old folks' homes and Florida are both very dirty. Anyway, continue.
You can't expect to work at McDonald's and live in one of the most desirable places in the country to live.
Once again, they're not expecting that. They live in Florida. Thought we'd been over this. All right, champ, I'm going to try to explain this to you slowly. If there's a McDonald's in a community, people absolutely should be able to expect to work there and live in that community. That's how an economy works. If these rich folks don't want to have to leave their gentrified communities to shovel their face full of shitty fast food, they need people who live in those communities to make and serve them that shitty fast food. Trucking companies in Hawaii don't get to be like, oh, I'm only going to pay $3 a gallon for fuel because that's what it costs in less desirable places to live. You want to run this particular business in this particular place, you need to pay the rate of what it costs to get the commodities you need to run that business in that place. If you need a workforce, you need to pay that workforce what it costs them to be where you need them to be. No different than McDonald's needs to pay whatever that shit is they try to pass off as chicken in that particular place. You can't afford it, you can't afford to do business there.
Why is it so difficult? The world doesn't owe you anything. I'm sick of all these people bitching all the time.
Don't you, on TikTok right now, have a video bitching about how boomer judges won't give you a trophy at car shows for your Hyundai Genesis. You said out loud on the internet that the world doesn't owe you anything, you're sick of people bitching all the time, while also knowing full well that you have posted on the internet bitching that you deserve a trophy for having a boring car with the most overdone engine swap of all time. First off, you literally feel like you're entitled to a trophy. Could you be more cliche? You said this with your whole chest, and that didn't set off any self-awareness alarms or anything? Anyway, you were saying?
It's not the company's fault that you're an idiot. Go out, learn a skill, start a business. It's not that hard. But if only thing you people can do is get on social media like this fucking guy here and bitch, the amount of information on that phone that is at your fingertips, and you're spending it on TikTok hearing other people bitch about their lives.
I don't mean to point out the obvious or nothing, but aren't you on TikTok right now bitching?
You aren't that valuable. Flipping burgers. You can become anything you're willing to become in this country. Nothing is stopping you.
Okay there, big shooter, then would you mind explaining to the class why you are still living a mediocre lower middle class existence in fucking Indiana then? Not judging or nothing, it just doesn't exactly feel like you're leading by example in this particular situation.
Stop expecting people like this guy, this fucking nerd here, to make it up for you. Jeff Bezos started Amazon in his fucking garage. Fucking Apple started in a garage. You see a trend here.
I do see a trend of you being incredibly gullible. Apple was not started in a garage. In fact, the garage played almost no role in the founding of Apple. Don't take my word for it. Ask the guy who single-handedly designed and built the computers. His name's Steve, but it's not Steve Jobs. Jeff Bezos' garage was actually converted into a rec room long before he moved into the cushy 3-bedroom house with a $250,000 check from mommy and daddy to start his business. He did that on purpose, specifically so he could say he started the company in his garage for marketing purposes. The tech garage myth is so fucking cliche that even Google tried rewriting their own origin story to say that they were started in a garage. Ironically, nobody believed them because, Google exists, so it was easy to look up that it was bullshit. But they sell you these stories because they hope that you are dumb enough to believe that it wasn't rich parents and privilege that handed them their success, and that if you work really hard for next to nothing, that you too one day could be as successful as they are. And when you aren't, it's your own fault. Don't hate them. Obviously, it works.
This job here is for somebody's kid. That's what places like this in Bradenton are for.
No, the fuck they are not. McDonald's isn't closed from 7 to 4 when school-age kids are, in fucking school. And what the fuck does somebody's age have to do with the wage they deserve for the labor that they're doing? Just because somebody is school age, they deserve to be paid less? You do realize that that is quite literally advocating for exploiting child labor. Which is, something that most of us adults with even a moderately functioning brain and moral compass agree is not a good thing. And minimum wage was always intended to be the wage of a decent living. FDR was pretty clear about that when he, made it a law. And that's what it was, more or less, for half a century until, Ronald Reagan ruined the world. So maybe stop sitting in the proverbial chair in the corner of the room with your hand down your pants, cheering on the billionaires getting to have all the fun in the motel bed with all the stuff that you worked for. It's not a cute look.